Welcome to Matrickz Tech Talk.
In this episode, Marc-Oliver Pahl talks about privacy and security concerns in pervasive computing. Today, we have a guest from Technische Universität München, Munich University of Technology, Marc-Oliver Pahl. So I know Marc since 2010. We're both PhD students at Technische Universität München. We were actually sitting across the hall, and time to time we're drinking beer together downstairs. Marc, welcome to Matrickz.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm still remembering the good old times.
Good old times. So to tell a little bit about Marc, he has been working in IoT, Internet of Things, since 10 years. Marc is leading a team called IoT Smart Space Orchestration, and he's doing his habilitation at the same time. Yes. He's focusing his research on the security and privacy aspect of IoT. So I will now hand it over to Marc to say a little bit about yourself, about your work. So Marc.
The mantra of my research and my work is when you take your smartphone, what happened when Apple introduced the smartphone, the iPhone 1? Well, they didn't have the best hardware, but what they enabled is that crowdsourced software development for these devices became possible. And I try to do exactly the same thing for the actual physical environments that we live in. And the smartphone is actually a very good example for a smart space because it also has sensors and actuators that interact with the environment, so they control something in case of the actuators, or they sense something in case of the sensors, and then you have software, and the software is doing something with it. And the cool thing that Apple did is they introduced an API so that software developers could create portable software, even more in the Android ecosystem, that you can develop for one device and then it can run on all the millions of devices that are deployed everywhere. And I want to create the same ecosystem for the smart spaces, and this is obviously much more challenging because in a smart space everything is first distributed, and second, there's no single manufacturer that puts all the devices together and says this is a smart space, but you have heterogeneous hardware developers with heterogeneous protocols, even heterogeneous links, and every smart space is different from another one. And therefore I try to create programming abstractions that enable to program this. And key challenges, as you said already, are indeed security and privacy. And this is also the key thing that is lacking today, I would say, in this Internet of Things.
Fascinating. So you ended with what is lacking, the security and privacy. So I would go a little bit backward. My experience with Internet of Things was back in 2007, 2008, when I was working for a European Union funded project called Hydra. We were defining scenarios of smart home. We were talking about connecting with the back end, how to make the environment smart, everything, including your heating system, your refrigerator, everything will be connected to the internet. Now, if I look in the real life, some of those things we already see in the market. We have Alexa, we have Google Home, we have everything have a smart label on it when it's connected to the internet. So being an insider of IoT for the last 10 years, where do you think we stand today, technology-wise? We'll come to the privacy and security bit in a second. Technology-wise, how mature it is. When can we expect to see that becoming consumerized, in a sense, smartphone has been?
Today, smart spaces are indeed reality, because indeed you can create them. And what you need there is either time or money. Because if you have time and you're an engineer like we are, then of course you can dedicate a lot of time building your own devices and installing them, connecting them, creating software stacks on top of that, and you can automate whatever you want to automate there. So the keyword is the Arduino. That was really changing the game, because from that point in time it was like, okay, everybody could create their devices on their own. So this was the development of the maker movement. And so this was the democratization of the hardware. So if a hardware is missing today, you go to a maker space and then you 3D print your parts. And if you have read the tutorials, or if you have the gift that you're technologically able to do the things, then you can create any device that you want to have. So this is where on the time side. On the money side is if you invest enough money, then there are companies that will install you your customized system that does something. But these systems will always be limited because the off-the-shelf solution for everything is not existing at the moment for this Internet of Things. I say that the Internet of Things hardware is still siloed, meaning that you can get the coolest gadgets for, let's say, entertainment, for instance. You can get your cool home cinema system, but it will typically not be coupled with your, I mean, it might even be coupled with a lighting system, but then maybe not with the shutters or with the air conditioning because you want to have it cozy or not. The offerings are still within silos, and connecting those silos is difficult and also brings different problems. And so this is the state of the Internet of Things that we have today. And why do I see it as a problem? Because from the introduction before, where I said I want to create an ecosystem where everybody can create software, so I can spin the thought a little bit further, because in the end, computer science is like magic. Because you're writing a program, and this is exactly like when you're writing a spell. So you write a spell and then you give it to the machine, it's executed, and then your magic is happening, and exactly the magic that you programmed in. And the cool thing why I'm in this Internet of Things or pervasive computing area is that with this pervasive computing, your playground is massively extending, because it was like at the beginning, it was like these huge mainframes that some people had in the cellar. So some people were some 5-6 companies in the world. Moving towards personal computers, so you brought this CRT on your desk and you could have games in there and everything, the things that were fascinating us in our youth. Then the smartphones came, which was you had mobile computing. You could carry this device around and you had computational power at your fingertips, literally. That was unimaginable to us. Like, I mean, when you think back in computers of 1994, for instance, like even before the iPhone, the computers were much more powerful than that. And if today you look at today's smartphone from today, it's like a computer from 5 years ago, roughly. When you look at smartphones today, they are so powerful. When you think of computers 5 years ago, this is what the smartphones provide as power today. And so this is the one thing. So you have a very powerful computer at your hand, and at the same time, this is why it's called also mobile computing. You have this mobile operator links to the internet. So you have the entire computational power of the cloud backend at your disposal everywhere. So this was a big extent, but with the pervasive computing it goes even further, because it means I can write a program that does iconic use cases are you're having a video call with your family and you have monitors as walls everywhere, and then the people you're talking to are just following you through the rooms, for instance. And you can program that once you have the unified interface so that you can interface indeed the actual hardware that you installed. And this is why it's fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. You mentioned several things. You talked about Arduino. Mm-hmm. So that was the magic moment. The invention of Arduino was the Gutenberg moment. This enabled us this whole acceleration. And as you said, it's from one to many, mainframe being used by many people. We were at one-to-one. We went to mobility. Now we are going to pervasive, meaning one to many. There will be hundreds of devices serving one person. That naturally brings us, with the development will accelerate, like Moore's law. It'll take off exponentially that we have seen in the smartphone industry, we've seen in many other industries. How about the development of the required security and privacy along with this technological development? Mm-hmm. Where do you see that's going?
So indeed what we had is, with the mainframe we had many-to-one computing because many people were using one mainframe. Mm-hmm. Then with the personal computer we had one-to-one computing. Yes. With the smartphone we had one-to-many because both of us own even multiple smartphones but also multiple computers, so we're one person having multiple devices. And with the pervasive computing, one notion is also ambient computing. You even get to star, so multiple people using multiple devices.
So it's end-to-end.
It's end-to-end, yeah. Think about like the iconic device there is these smart screens that you have in the stations for the trains, for instance. So there at the moment, they're only one directional, presenting something to you, but this could also be more interactive, like having cameras and showing your email, for instance, when you pass by. Where we come then, of course, to what you just said, security and privacy. So what is happening there? And so Yeah, you also said like Moore's law, like the business rocketing. Security is indeed the key challenge, being a tool for something, and privacy, I think, is the big thing where we currently have problems, and we'll also run into more problems. And let me briefly explain that. So with social media like Facebook or tech companies like Google that are neutrally saying, looking at what we do in the internet, they are gathering for many years lots of data of each of us. With new analytics techniques like these artificial intelligence techniques, for instance, this data now becomes accessible and also mineable in the sense that you can make sense of the information that you stored before. And they are storing for years because storing is totally inexpensive. So each of us can be sure that there's a huge record of data of each of us. The main reason why no bad things happen are that it was difficult to mine these, I would say. So the data is used for doing targeted advertising, for instance. So this is what we also recently saw a little bit more clear. But the profiling of the people will become more and more realistic. And it's even offered, like when you run today a campaign on Facebook, then you can set, okay, I want to target girls age 11 to 15 that like horse riding. And so this was also unimaginable like 5 years ago. I would have said like, okay, yeah, so no one will be able to provide that. And so this is the security aspect regarding data. And so data is the key. So also in my research, my focus is on data because algorithms actually want to interact with data, and connecting devices is then a necessary burden in order to enable service algorithms to talk to each other, to provide functionality. And security is currently a problem on all levels. So it starts with the actual devices, and then you have to pair these devices. You have the heterogeneous protocols in between. You have the different vendors that do not interact with their security solution if they offer security solutions, because security is something that people don't want to pay for, because it's something they don't see. As long as nothing breaks, why do I need it? I mean, it's not functionality in the positive sense, like, okay, I have 50 features plus security, and security is a big buzz, why I buy it. So people will only realize it when it's not there. And so to me, as someone who's driving the scientific development forward there, I always tell the people, if you don't do the security right, you can forget about everything else. Because from a market perspective, this will be the total showstopper. If now there's an IoT market is growing and then suddenly there are security incidents because something happens, like think about devices like something opening your front door, and then people are hacking in, and okay, yeah, all the front doors of this vendor opened now. This will be big issues. And then the trust into the technology that is slowly building up towards this IoT technology, it will go down immediately. And so this is yet to come. But that said, people also tend to take security not so seriously, in my experience. So it's like, I mean, huge things happen. Think about the Snowden revelations, for instance. So this was not much in the press anymore, because people were just like, oh, well, yeah, probably I'm not affected. I mean, to me, this was totally striking, because to me it was like, okay, if someone can replay packets through my network interface and I go to jail for child pornography, for instance, then this was the biggest attack possible. So just like explaining it a little bit more, so Snowden revealed that there is the possibility that when you have your computer, that someone from the outside can pretend that your computer is surfing somewhere. And so one attack there would be that you are made surfing, for instance, in Germany, and lucky also in the rest of the world, big issue, like surfing child pornography is an absolutely no-go, and it's hard prosecuted for good reasons. And so if I want to take you out of the business, I could do exactly this thing with you. I could tell the police, okay, Hassan is surfing child pornography, then I could make your computer surf child pornography, and then the people observing you, like the legal people in Germany, so the police, they would see, okay, Hassan's computer is indeed surfing child pornography, and then you would at least have some hard days to explain to them like how this happened if they believe you. And so this to me was like a huge attack to the personality. So because like that, you can take someone out of the entire system. And the tricky thing about it is that you use the framework of the legal state with these good mechanisms there in order to indirectly take you out. And so there also nothing big happened. And this is like a huge issue. The thing with the front doors opening, this is like a smaller issue, but people are still buying those devices, and the vendors just say like, okay, yeah, sorry, we did that. There's a firmware update now, it should not be possible anymore. And so to me, the good thing would be, this is also why I do also research in that direction, would be to have verifiable security. So that you would have a need in order to being able to sell your device, you have to provide a certain level of security. Or you would have like a labelization that says like, okay, this device passed the following tests that really verify that it provides a certain security level.
Fascinating. You mentioned so many stimulating points. So let's start with the word you just mentioned, that if people or the industry are not taking security seriously. And as Matrickz is operating in the automotive domain, I know this very well that yes, in the automotive domain, security is not taken seriously. The examples you just gave, this impersonation and of child pornography and all those, this is threatening, however not life-threatening. When it comes to automotive, it is life-threatening. We have seen several high-profile accidents, several high-profile hacks, and the cars that are still in the street are 10, 15 years old and even built today are actually bootleggers' paradise. If you look at the architecture, you know, the attack that was performed by, it was in the labs, it was not a malicious attack, but the exploit they found out for Chrysler, for example, those are still possible. So the question of awareness, question of company not taking it seriously, how do you see it in the automotive industry? Because what I see is these problems that we had in the identity space 10 years ago. This is coming back in the automotive, and when we'll have an autonomous vehicle, more and more cars will be connected, and the problems will be actually magnifying. It's not going to get any lessen. So how do you see that in automotive industry?
What I can imagine coming from my domain is that a big issue is always standardization. So the vendors are providing something, and then they have to become interoperable with the other vendors that provide the other control units in the car, for instance. And to my experience, what sadly, but also it's not unexpected that it happens, is that the consensus that they get for the standardization is not always the best one, but it's rather a minimalistic one of like taking all the security wants of the different vendors together and then taking the minimum, because then none of them has to adapt too much. And so this is also what my more outside perspective on the car is. Pushing it forward from like the research project with more car-related topics. So what I see there is, on the one hand, going towards this unification of the communication infrastructure. So also doing all IP in the car, for instance, putting different systems there together. And then we come much closer to what I do again, because then essentially we have a distributed system, and in this distributed system, entities have to interact and provide services together and to do something there. But from my knowledge from the car industry, it's less urgent in the sense that the systems that the different vendors provide, they are typically acting autonomously for a certain functionality, so like braking or entertainment. And from my more outsider point of view, they are not converging very fast. So to my understanding, the vendors are still reluctant, for instance, to say, okay, with my car entertainment system, I have a Linux, and this is all even real-time able, and so let's just offload the braking functionality from the control unit for the braking down to the radio, because we have the computer anyways and can save some money and especially weight and cables. And so this will be my perspective. But maybe you can tell me if this is also from the insider, if this is like a right view or what I don't get that well.
This is the current status. What the main mistake is, which we've seen in the Chrysler hack, that you cannot just isolately secure your infotainment system or any ECUs, because you're connected to the CAN bus. So once that is compromised, pretty much everything is compromisable. Like you said, once it comes to the embedded devices, this is again an ubiquitous environment. You're not only talking to your ECUs, you're talking to the infrastructure, the roads, you're talking to many other things. So it is a ubiquitous system again. Now, so in the development process, as you said, it'll be all IP. So some researchers, some security experts will say, oh, this will be a security nightmare. I agree. There's no way to stop this. This is going to happen. You know, if as a security researcher, you and me, we think this is a bad decision, the market does not care. The market is going to move on, and there'll be more and more internet-based, Ethernet-based, IP-based system in the car, because that brings more functionality that is more attractive to the consumer. Again, the awareness part is lacking. This gives us an opportunity, actually, you know, as security researchers. There are problems to solve. What do you think that the way your research community is dealing with it? Are they taking more serious than the industry?
So the researchers seem to be like very cruel when it comes to saying what is novel, and it seems that novelty to them does not mean combining existing things in an intelligent way and then showing like, okay, so now it has these properties, but rather, okay, it has to be something that was not at all there before. So to my personal experience, it's a little bit difficult to publish solutions that are highly relevant for practical use, but that are rather intelligently combining existing technology than saying, okay, this is a totally new problem and we have to find a solution there. Because from a technological perspective, to me, the lucky situation is, as you also implied a little bit, that we have solutions for the key security problems. So we have identity management, we have encryption for links, we have basically like authentication, authorization, and encryption of the communication channels, which are the key ingredients. And so there are existing protocols. And a pro side of moving to the all IP is that, especially for the internet protocol, there are standards and there are things that are already established. And there I see the challenge rather in, if you, for whatever reasons, have to save communication traffic, so you want to have really small messages, then the challenge might be in stripping these protocols down from being full-blown to being less blown, but maybe similarly secure. So there I'm thinking about, when you think about these ECUs in the car being connected and regarding the car as a closed ecosystem that might have a defined gateway to the outside world, which might be the radio interface there, then it might be that within this car you may consider maybe even shorter key lengths or something like that still okay. At the same time, while saying that, so if someone connects to the CAN bus in the car, someone should maybe also not be able to hack it, even though the car is at the moment still a personalized device. So that means you own your car and you know who's traveling with the car, and so you have a certain trust relation to these people. And that means they are not adversarial than when you take someone random from the internet who might have some incentives to do something. But I think this problem will become even stronger when we move towards autonomous mobility. So when we think about this scenario that we might have in 10 years maybe, or in 15 years, that we have autonomous cars that are at your disposal when you request them. So when you have cars as a service and you just say like, okay, now I want a car from here to Munich inner city, and then one car is coming, I might even select the type, then it's coming, and then it's driving me there, and then there might indeed be individuals that want to hack those devices, even for malicious reasons, like I want to hurt other people, or I want to get some money from the manufacturer, and this is why I install some things that make the cars crash or something like that.
The fact that today we have highly personalized cars, the malicious scenario is not that prevalent.
I would say so, yeah, because the attack vectors are not that strong. So if even if you lend me your car, it's still that I have a personal relationship to you. So you will probably not lend it to a random someone who doesn't look trustworthy, even that you find on the street, and say like, okay, here's my car, just drive around, do whatever you want with it. And so the environment where the attacks may happen is more friendly. So there I don't see the active people attacking something, but of course the potential an attack that you can think of today is like, okay, you have a USB stick and someone is putting it into the radio because you prepared it. It's like, okay, newest CD of whoever is a currently famous artist, and then you put it in. I put it in your car because I want to listen to it, and then the software is installing something malicious. So this is of course an attack scenario. Plus the hopeful isolation of the systems that we still have today, so that the entertainment system hopefully is not able to break out its sandbox cage in order to access the braking system, for instance. And in that direction, if I may ask a question, so when this autonomous driving was starting, there was this guy, I think George Hott, who was creating this autonomous driving device that he was plugging into, I think it was a Prius car, to the CAN bus directly there, and then he said like, yeah, you can just mount my kit and then this car will become an autonomous car. And the way I understood it was that he was able to control things once he had access to this physical CAN bus there. And the mitigation strategy of the car manufacturers seemed to be, okay, it's legally not allowed, and if you do that, we will bring you to court and then you will be dead. And is this a typical strategy at the moment still?
It's a great question. So here is how things should be. The manufacturer of the car, they should be the hardware provider, and there should be an app store kind of a thing where you download your cruise control system that you like, your autonomous driving software that you like. That is the ideal scenario that could have. This is one direction that could go to. The problem is once you open up this OBD2 port for everyone, for like I said, crowd development, the big bang of Apple, Android started like this. And once you open it up, this is tremendously great for the growth of the industry, innovation. I'm an innovation fan, this should happen. But this also opens up the bootlegger's paradise. Yeah, it opens up a lot of back doors. So believe it or not, I think this is gonna happen because once the technology is possible, once the growth is possible, it is going to happen. The big manufacturers cannot stop it. At one point, they will also open it up. Now, for that reason, I believe a serious investment in the security field is important before it's too late. Because what happened in the IT industry is your privacy was compromised. Yeah, the big scandals that just took place recently. We researchers were talking about them a decade ago, and they happened. So it's a problem. Your privacy is compromised. But what we're saying today, when this will happen 10 years from now, people will lose their lives. That is the fundamental problem, fundamentally different from regular internet and when it comes to a vehicle that's connected to the internet. All right, Mark, you also mentioned that Facebook targeting is a privacy problem. Now, let me ask you the definition of privacy, because as an entrepreneur, I see that democratization of entrepreneurship and consumer choice. Yeah. Because small companies did not have the possibility to reach consumers the way they can now because of this targeting. And from the consumer's end, the consumers are not limited to 3 choices from big brands. They can only go to CNN. They have more choices now. So to me, that's a good thing. And if you take the definition of privacy as the privacy is your right to be left alone, as long as you don't want to be left alone from this privilege or problem, depends on the perspective, it is not a threat. So what's your opinion on that?
Mm-hmm. So I would rather see the privacy definition going towards, I want to be able to define who gets which information of me, which is similar to what you said, but it comes from the opposite direction, because I see the risk not in these services that you were talking about, because they are indeed the positive side. So you can do more targeted addressing to something. Well, let's maybe stick to that for a second. So you can do more targeted addressing. And so there was this company that maybe didn't have that much to do with it, but was the iconic case for that, this Cambridge Analytica. And then you had this influencing that was towards, like, when I have a certain tendency to like something, so let's assume I like preserving nature, then these algorithms would show me advertisements that go into that direction. So it was political parties, so then they would probably show me, if you are the one who can be voted, you is standing in front of the Hambacher Forest, and then you're standing there and saying like, okay, your most important point is preserving the Hambacher Forest. And then I would say, okay, Hassan likes the Hambacher Forest, I like to protect trees, so then let's vote for Hassan. So it's showing me then this filter bubble, information echo chamber, these are the terms that are typically used there, that is affirming me in thinking, okay, I was unsure if I like rather Hassan or Hillary, and so yeah, Hillary was not in front of these nice trees, she didn't pay for the advertisement, and now I'm more for Hassan. And so this, I think, is problematic, because we are today living in a world of information overflooding. So we have too much information, and therefore we need some kind of filtering, and the industry, especially Facebook, is nice to us, so they're providing very strong ways of filtering. So if we would create 2 accounts and we would befriend exactly the same people and would act the way we act both, normally we would have the same account, then probably, or like the same account in the sense of we have the same friends and we started at the same point in time having all of them, then we would both probably see totally different timelines. So we would both see a different portion of the digital reality that we have there. And so this is what I see problematic for this selection thing. This is more problematic to me for more important decisions than which product do I buy. So in the end, when it's like, okay, I want to buy something and the algorithm of Amazon or Facebook is providing me ads for companies that are relevant there, I'm actually happy about it. So I was recently buying a drone, and so I was looking at videos for which antennas do I need. And then the algorithms proposed me different antennas, and maybe I would not have found these antennas if the algorithms would not have proposed them to me, so I was happy to have this functionality. At the same time, when it comes to coming back to this example that we said before with the attacking the personality. So when I know that everything that I do in the internet is recorded, so take again Facebook. So what is Facebook doing? When I click on a link in Facebook, it's not opening in my browser, but it's opening in the Facebook browser that is streaming everything through the Facebook server, and that is recording wherever I look, at which time, for how long, and where do I click, and what do I do there. So it's recording basically everything. And so when I then put the data analytics on top of that, then I have a very, very good personalization profile. So then the people know, let's take something absurd. So I like to look at the letter Z, because whenever there was a Z, I was like, okay, there's a Z, cool. I was looking at it for a very long time. And this is problematic, because this enables then the people having this knowledge to influence me, coming back to what I said at the beginning, because then I can push, the more I know about the individual, the more I can also shape the individual, so put it into certain directions. And this is problematic regarding the influencing. Regarding another important point for that, to me, is the freedom of the individual. So when I know that all my movements are observed, then I'm under constant surveillance. And this must not necessarily be like state surveillance. It can also be a surveillance by the companies. And when I have that, then indeed I might change my behavior. Because the strongest thing of surveillance is just not seeing it, but knowing that it happens everywhere. And so indeed, this is something I do. So when I see a Facebook link and it says like whatever clickbaiting stuff, like largest shark in the world, it's like I'm thinking like, okay, it looks interesting, so I could click on it. But then I'm actively deciding against that often, because I think I don't want this to be in my personal profile that Facebook is keeping of me. And this makes the people paranoid to a certain extent, or not paranoid, because this would mean like it's over-exaggerated, but more like I'm not freely doing what I would like to do in that moment, but I'm considering like, okay, in the background there's some surveillance going on or some recording going on what I do, and I don't want this to be on my profile, or I don't want it to be on my profile. Or second, coming closer to what you said before, in the future I also want to see other videos than the ones of the largest sharks, and it seems when I click on the largest shark for 3 times, then I get like 20 times as much largest shark videos, and I don't want to see them. And this also comes then again to this, if they always show to me blue balls because they think I like blue balls, then I think my world consists only of blue balls. But it's not the reality. So the reality is more diverse. And I, as an individual, want to have the free choice to also get to know things that do not fit to what the algorithms think that fit to me, because I'm not predetermined in the sense of, okay, it's totally clear that Mark will always only like blue balls. But it's like maybe if I see an orange cube, I also like orange cubes, but the algorithm would never have thought that I like orange cubes because I've never seen an orange cube before. And this is what I see problematic.
That is fascinating. There has been an article written by Yuval Noah Harari in the Guardian newspaper recently, and he exactly explains what you just said.
Oh, really? Cool.
So this is, he's going into that way. Today the government is hacking into your brain using this kind of mechanism. You know, this is how the entire system is hacked to make you influence in the direction they want you to.
And there, into that direction, I'm also running this other interview series about this digitalization, and I was talking to Achim Killer, who's the journalist from the Bayerischer Rundfunk, who's also covering security topics there. And with him, I came to the topic: what is better? Is it better to be monitored by a private company or by the state? My conclusion there was that I'm rather monitored by the state than by a private company, because the state has even more limitations in the sense of that its purpose is to serve the people and not to serve the shareholders. So the state in its original sense is there to make the life better for the people of the state, because the state are the basis, should be the basis of the people should be the basis of the state. While for the company, the interest is in making more revenue. And so if the company has a rocketing business model that makes use of your data, like this Cambridge Analytica obviously had, because I mean they made some money before they were killed, then the company may decide to do that. While the state, there hopefully the control functions are still in place sufficiently, like the press, for instance, revealing that and saying, okay, it's not possible. As we see, like in Germany after terroristic attacks, when they say, like, okay, we want to change the Telemediengesetz so that we can survey all communication lines. There was at least an uproar, even though negatively it was somehow still allowed to do that, so it was leveraged. But there's more control than when a company does that. Because if Facebook changes the algorithms, what they sometimes do, so then I suddenly see the orange cubes, and I'm totally, okay, why do the orange cubes come now? I might even be disturbed there. No one cares, in the sense of there is no board that is, like, no ethical board that is taking care of that. Another interesting perspective there is exactly this ethical board. So to me, it's with this privacy discussion and with the security discussion, seeing security as a tool to provide the privacy, the key point at the moment is that the society at large has to start discussing much more about these issues, because as you also said before, we are in a technology-driven world. And as someone developing technology, so as I said at the beginning with this, you create a spell as computer scientist and then it's rolling out and doing something. We are very powerful in the sense of that we can shape what happens to the people. And what was also the main topic of the symposium I was running, being human with algorithms, was is the society aware of what is happening there, and what do the people say about that? And so to me, what we need a broad societal discussion about the possibilities that we have there from a technology perspective. And then the society has to create some rules, some norms about what is considered ethical. So what is something that is good for the society and what is considered unethical, and therefore should be banned not only by the consumers, because the consumers might not be a good decider, because in the end they might say like, okay, if Hassan's product that is privacy aware costs me 100 and Mark's product that is not privacy aware but has more fancy buttons costs 5, then I go for the Mark's product. And so the consumers, especially in Germany, are more like money driven, I would say. And so this is something then where the society and then the head of the society, which is the state, has to come in and do regulations into a certain direction. And I don't see this to come at the moment because it's a complicated topic and there is no societal discussion about it, or not sufficient discussion. And so there is no urge to the politicians to cover this topic. And so I would encourage everybody, encourage your politicians to go more into that direction, because it's happening now. So the data is there, the analytics are happening now, and so the negative use of the data becomes more and more possible. And if it's not negatively used today and you don't see it today, as everything is stored and is stored forever, it might come. So in 5 years, then someone might come and say like, okay, I got a record of you, I get some pictures of you from your webcam that were captured, or some Facebook uploads, which is also something that we see today. Like when you're raising a young child, there are lots of advices telling you like, okay, consider carefully what you put on the internet, because this child will be adult like when it's 12 years old, for instance, then it will be in its puberty, and then suddenly the friends or enemies might come like, okay, here's a picture of you naked in whatever, in a ice ball or whatever, in a compromising situation that your parents posted. And so this is something that future generations will have to face much more than we did, because we both grew up in a world where the smartphones or the cell phones even were just emerging. And so we are still used to this old world where we had like facts. So we looked in an encyclopedia and then this information was somehow considered to be true. Today we look on Wikipedia, which I consider a good medium, but you can also easily influence it. So if I change the article about you today and write down, okay, Hassan did this and that, at least some audience will capture it. So there a good example is this, what Jan Böhmermann did with the Varoufakis gate. You remember this? So it was like Yanis Varoufakis, the finance minister of Greece. So he took a video where he did this, and then the team of Böhmermann, they were changing the digital information, and so they were making him show the middle finger. And then what they did is they uploaded it to YouTube and made it look like this was uploaded 1.5 years ago at some conference, I think in Bulgaria. And then the German press, they only researched lightly, so they found this, oh yeah, it's really true because there's another video on the internet about that. And then they were reporting about it. They said like, okay, this guy who's so horrible, he's even showing the middle finger there. And so this is also an interesting artifact to me, because it shows the effects of this digital transformation on reality, because it's very immersive. So it's a video, it's on the internet, so everything that's on the internet has to be true, or to put it the other way around, if it's not in the internet, then it did not happen. And you can easily change this digital media. And so this is also something we didn't have before. So it becomes more and more complicated to orientate in this world.
You mentioned a very, very good point once again, that awareness. Are people aware? I mean, there is a social dialogue. When you show your car is driven by a dog, then obviously you believe it, but it's too dangerous. People lose their life. We have seen some high-profile accidents. So I'm actually driving toward a little bit of towards safety, but security and safety is interrelated. So yeah, having said that, I agree with you. It's the awareness is really the thing that is missing, and you came up with a solution that is regulation. Do you see any technical solution for this privacy-related stuff, or is it only regulation that's gonna stop it?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely both. But as the customers are not buying the product because it has the best security technology, I think the first step is indeed having a societal consensus on what we want to have there. And the hardest form of societal consensus is then regulations. Coming to the technical side, so I think the solution that we need is security by design. So security that is non-circumventable. And this is the key for privacy and also for safety, of course. And safety is, I think, much easier to sell because safety, as you say, is something that we feel immediately. So there was also the case that there were accidents happening more recently, and this was to my feeling really taking the trust of people down a little bit from this autonomous driving, because before the people were very positive, and even if cars were maybe sometimes missing a red traffic light but nothing seriously happened, it was still like, okay, the autonomous driving is the big thing and it seems to be an all positive thing. But the moment that something really happens to humans, then this is something that affects the people directly, because there regarding the safety affects the people directly. So this is why I think safety is something that is easier to sell to people or to convince people that is something that is necessary, because if your privacy is violated, then it's something that I can anticipate. I can say let's take a very bad case. So Hassan is in prison at the moment because someone accused him of doing something that he didn't do because he just faked some data. I'm like, sorry, because I would definitely be sorry because I'm your friend, but even if I just read about you in the newspaper and then later it comes out that it didn't happen to you, then I'm sorry about it, and I would say, okay, that was bad, but it's still, I'm not you, so it's not affecting me personally. And when it's about a car running over a pedestrian or someone with a bike, then it's closer to me, because it's like, okay, I also sometimes go on the street with my bike, and then if suddenly an autonomous car comes and drives me over, and a human driver would not have done, then this is okay, I don't want to have autonomous cars. I immediately have this feeling. And so there it's also interesting to me, coming back to what you said before, with this having a rocketing market and trying to access it early, seeing the different players in the field working differently on the approaches for this autonomous driving. So some being more aggressive, which would, if it works out, bring them the advantage to being the first on the market with big products, and so they could get the initial money at least from the people. And others like being more conservative and being then slower, but maybe doing it in a more responsible way, in the sense of that the things that we move there weight 1 to whatever, I don't know how much a car can weigh, like 5 tons or something like that, and this is just massive. I mean, you would also not put an elephant in a porcelain thing there if you want to protect the porcelain. And so to me this is also a very important dimension of this autonomous driving, having on the one hand the companies that want to strive it further, and on the other hand the security and safety of the people.
So Mark, the idea of minimal viable product, as you mentioned, is fascinating when it comes to software. It worked. But it's fatal when it comes to automotive. So what's your thought on that?
One aspect that I see with recent technology that is also a strong trend in science, so because I'm in computer networks, and so there this so-called softwareization is also a big issue, because we are moving from hardware parts, in my case then routers that forward internet packets, towards having the control functionality, so the so-called control plane running in software. So we have software that does something. And once we have software, we have, of course, the ability to change things. And we can change them fast, because changing the wheels of a car or any hardware aspect is costly and also takes time, while changing a software feature is very easy. And so what is interesting to me is that maybe since Google and their Google search and also their other products, we have there is a always better mentality, always beta mentality is established, in the sense of that they are shipping the product early, and then it might still have some bugs, and then they have custom field tries and they gain insights from that, and then it's running. The key difference for me between having Google pure software products and having then cars where we put more software on that does something is that the cars are cyber-physical systems. So they are cyber systems, so they are running software, but they are operating in the physical space. Well, when I have my smartphone and I have Google Maps, it's first of all operating in the virtual space here only, but even that one created fatalities because there were people going into water because the Google Maps said there's a ferry and they just trusted the map here more than what else. But when we have a car and we have like different autonomy levels, for instance, that come by software update, then there's much more effect to the physical reality, because if the car unluckily crashes somewhere or just different maneuvers, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a fatality. It could just be that you have like more aggressive driving suddenly, or you have a different behavior. It's like overtaking more often and stuff like that. It's highly affecting the physical space where the humans are interacting. What really happens to my understanding is that you come more and more to this bring your own device in the car, that you say you combine the smartphone ecosystem that you have already with your car entertainment system. So when I think about my father bought a new car like last year, and so there when I connect my phone, then I see the screen of my phone on the middle console. So to my perception, what happens is that the ecosystem that the people like, namely the smartphone ecosystem, that this merges into the car, and then these formally separated software worlds, they are merging together, and then something happens there. And the car industry itself I perceived more as quite conservative. So they were rather reluctant in putting in new features. So this was something when, I mean, Tesla was really driving this autonomous driving and also the electric cars forward to my perception. I mean, they had similar functionality like the other cars, like with the navigation and so on, but they really introduced features much faster. And they are also the company that, which I always read, is that the interesting thing about Tesla is that they are a software company that does cars and not a car company that also does software. And so they come from the opposite side. And so with the car manufacturers, I had the impression that they are quite reluctant in softwareizing things, to put it like that. While in Tesla, it seems, okay, the car is another platform, like it's another Android phone that is there, and we put our software on it and then can test the things there.
Right. So it is said that Tesla is a computer with 4 wheels. Mm-hmm. Now it's even that far that they say Tesla is an app with 4 wheels. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Because you can get updates.
Yeah. It probably fits very well.
Mark, with your research experience and how things are moving in the last 10 years, and the autonomous vehicle is about to be reality pretty soon, how do you see the future? What is it going to bring positivity to the society? What's your take on that?
I think we will have different patterns of mobility. Because what will happen, what is already starting to happen, is that we will have autonomous cars that are maybe at the disposal of multiple people, because car sharing becomes also more easy, because if I share a car with you, I do not have to trust you on that you do not do races with the car, you destroy the car, because if it's driving autonomously, then I can easily share it with you, because the car will be driving as it was programmed. And so I think mobility will change. And what I'm really looking forward is that possibly we will have cities where we don't have cars standing around everywhere. And also like going to the electricity, more electric cars, where we don't have the exhaust of the cars anymore, so that it's not smelling like burnt gasoline anymore. So these are 2 positive things that I'm really looking forward to. And I think what it will bring is it will democratize mobility more, because more people will have access. So consider you would have children that are 14 years old, and they want to visit their friends, and with the internet we have more long distance friendships, or they want to visit their grandparents that might be living, if we're in Germany, somewhere else there. If you would have an autonomous car, you could maybe put them in there and they would drive there, they would be in their safe shell and it would go there. So this is a very nice vision for me. And regarding the exhaust, so there I was thinking, well, I was in Taipei earlier this year, and they have tons of motor scooters. And so there, this striking event to me was that one day it was raining, and the rain was washing all the dirt from the air, And then the air was totally normal. And the next day it was smelling like you're hanging directly behind the exhaust of a scooter again, everywhere in the city. And so luckily we don't have this in Germany, so it's not that strong. But I was just remembering back when I was younger, where we just had still had lead in the gasoline. And so when a car was passing by, and we also didn't have the catalyzers, there was like a strong smell from that car. And so I was just remembering this back when I was there, how lucky we are already. And I think once we are more electric or even fully electric, then it will be even more like that. And then I just imagine that the cities will be much nicer without the traffic jams and things like that.
I love that. Clean energy and democratization of mobility. Marc, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for watching Matrickz Tech Talk. If you have comments and questions, you can write below, and you're also welcome to write us an email at podcast@matrickz.de. See you in the next episode.
In this podcast show, we bring in the industry leaders and experts in the automotive domain to share their experiences along their journey. The mission of our podcast is to start a dialogue that will allow us to understand the development of automotive industry and where the automotive industry is going. You can ask questions to our guests directly. Just send us an email to podcast@matrickz.de. We'll schedule a call with you during the recording and you'll be part of our show. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any new episodes. Please share this video to help others get enlightened as well, and that would mean a great deal to us.